I mean, if I got called back to the office, I wouldn't cry about it like they're doing. Would I be aggravated? Probably.
We are 59 days, well, I guess technically 60 days now into 2024. And in the industry, over 8,100 people have been laid off. Over 8,000 people have been laid off in the video games industry. It seems like every week we have some sort of story of people, whether it was Unity. You saw Unity, that was a big story. Discord. Everybody is getting laid off for some reason in the video game industry. We are seeing a massive collapse. This ranges from, less than 10 people, 3 people, up to today's announcement of EA announcing another almost 700 people being laid off. This has been a consistent theme in the industry. And on the same day that EA announces that they are laying off more people, in the first 2 months, as over 8,000 people have lost their jobs, Rockstar developers, the developers behind GTA 6, are unhappy to be forced to return to the office to finish up GTA 6 final stretch of development. It's the most tone-deaf thing I may have ever seen in the industry in 18 years, as people are literally losing their jobs, and they're saying, but it's Rockstar's reckless decision to force staff back to the office. And that there's a quote from one person says, working from home has been a lifeline. No. I'm going to correct that. Working from home has been a convenience, which is no longer afforded here. This is from IGN. Now, they have different rules over. Now, this is being developed by a company over in primarily the UK, Rockstar North in Scotland. So obviously, when people think about the U.S. labor laws versus labor laws in Scotland, they're a little bit different. But last year, 170 Rockstar game workers in the UK signed a petition opposing mandate. Listen, this is just my God, it just drives me crazy. Last year, 170 Rockstar Games workers in the UK signed a petition opposing mandatory 3-day office work. So going into the office 3 days a week, they were like, no, we can't do that. And now workers are accusing Rockstar of broken promises and have expressed concerns about health, caring responsibilities, living arrangements, and heightened risk of work overwork. Also known as crunch. That's like the big buzzword in the video game space is you can't have crunch. It's ridiculous. And here's the IWGB, which is the Independent Workers Union of Great Britain, also alleges Rockstar has insisted flexible work options would remain available in an employee-wide email. This is a while back. Says this isn't our first step to 5 days a work week. No one wants to go back to the old ways of working, and they're saying it was broken promises, but they're in this final stretch. But this is from somebody, an anonymous Rockstar worker, and these are just soul crushing to hear, and honestly, just crazy. Working from home has been a lifeline for many of us at Rockstar, allowing us to balance care responsibilities, manage disabilities. Manage care responsibilities, manage disabilities, and relocate as we need. So once again, as opposed to a lifeline, you mean convenience. It has been a convenience for you. Now Rockstar is snatching away that lifeline convenience without a second thought for the workers who will be impacted most. After so many broken promises, we now fear management may even be paving the way for a return to toxic crunch practices. Senior leadership needs to rethink their reckless decision-making and engage with their staff to find arrangements that works for everybody. I mean this in the best possible way to that person. Fuck off. Like, fuck off. It's crazy.
Imagine being outsourced instead.
Right.
Then what
Imagine that.
Yeah, or, I wonder if these guys would ever talk to the ones living in Japan, working on those anime productions where they don't actually sleep ever because they're always working. I wonder what these guys have to say to these guys who are like, I have to go back to work in an office. It's terrible. Listen, the only thing I can say for that was, sure, it helps manage your kids. When you're home, you can babysit them. You don't have to send them off to daycare, whatever. And that's a huge issue, right? Parents no longer being able to parent their children. However, you can always get another job then, right? If you're going to cry about it, do something else then that would allow you to do what you want to do and make it convenient. I'm just saying.
So the comments here on this article have been about what you can expect, because you're telling this to people who work day-to-day jobs. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, the idea of like streaming is so hard. It's like, shut up, get over yourself. You saw that controversy over the weekend. Yeah. But this guy overall, he says, this is what it's like to work for someone. You can search for other employment if you don't like the work culture, location, hours, etc. The organization and its leadership must do what's best for the organization and stakeholders, so long as it's ethical, moral, and legal. Requiring employees to return to work is not illegal, unethical, or immoral. I'd prefer to work from home too. I'd also complain about and have complained about losing telework, but I also choose to stay in my current position, which I know I can leave and find other work, right? And that's just really what it comes down to is like.
Is there a reason why they were called back to the office? Like productivity, maybe, because people get lazy at home? And
I don't know the reasons, but I'm going to assume that. And as somebody who has worked both remotely and in an office setting, I think anybody who's worked in any sort of physical setting can tell you that generally the vast majority of time, production is way higher when you're surrounded by other people. And the reason that is, obviously, if Blabs and I work in an office and I need to know something from Blabs, I can just walk out to Blabs and say, hey, Blabs, tell me about this. Mm-hmm. And then you have a conversation instead of having to reach out, email, whatever. And the production of working remotely was such a convenience to people that the idea of stepping back in the office is just, it's mind numbing to me. People are so unbelievably privileged, and they don't even understand it, man.
It's also when you're working in an office, you have this motivation to be like, all right, I'm gonna get this day done so I can go home. But once you're actually working from home, you don't have that entire motivation to be like, I'm gonna be done with my day and I can do whatever I want at home because you're already at home. I think that's also another thing, motivation.
I mean, if I got called back to the office, I wouldn't cry about it like they're doing. Mm-hmm. Would I be aggravated? Probably. But when I was teaching from home, like you have to log in and you're constantly, I mean, I was like constantly on like a Zoom call, so it's not like I could just not be there. So I always thought that they would discover some kind of, I don't know, like not like a watching device, but something that could monitor people's, production from home. I really see, like, in the near future, when people are building new houses, there's going to be like an office, a new type of at-home office being put in homes, and these giant skyrise buildings might not even be needed for much. I know, like, the traffic in that, because that will solve a lot of problems if more people work from home, like traffic issues and things like that. Like, I think it's definitely the future, working from remote. I mean, of course, there's certain jobs you can't do from home, but it's like I would be curious to see what the reason was that they called him back. If they were just like, we need to get everybody back in the office, that way we can get this done on time. Let's get it done. But I just think the home office is going to be, I mean, a lot of people have a home office already, but I think it's going to be kind of like a new thing, building in some of these new homes where it's like people will work. Because I know a lot of people didn't go back after the lockdowns. Like, a lot of people, a lot of companies made it easier for people to stay home.
Their buildings.
So,
well, so there are people in that, like John and Epsilon, like they disagree, right? And I think that there's definitely a conversation to be had. But I'll say this: it goes back to what that guy said. At the end of the day, there's a deadline attached to this product, right?
Yeah.
Remove the idea that it's GTA 6 out of the equation. Put it, there's a whatever project A that you're working on. There are deadlines that need to be hit. And in order for that deadline to be hit, a giant group of people all have to be moving in the same direction, right? And when it goes back to the convenience aspect of working from home, right? And in the middle of the day, you can stop, you can take a walk, you can go pick up your kids, you can do whatever you want, right? And that's all great and dandy. But in an office setting, the reason why it's valuable to employers is they have an opportunity to keep you focused more than anything, right? They allow you to stay on task, build a culture. We talk about culture all the time in video games. All the culture and this development is so bad, right? Well, that the remote work may have something to do with it. I personally, as somebody who has run several companies, I'm a big believer in working out of an office. Now, small companies, I'm not talking about 800-900 people, right? I'm talking about 10-20 people, right? But I think it's important to have that interaction with people, to get to know people on a day-to-day basis, to get to know people personally outside of the office. And there are times where you get done working and you say, hey, you want to go grab a drink? Hey, you want to go get some food, whatever it may be. And you get to know that person a little bit better. And ultimately that improves the culture more. People can say it's a boomer take. Fine. That's fine. But I'm going off my personal experience. I'm a big
what's
believer in
crazy?
it.
Like, I don't know if you've ever saw like office buildings and like Google and like Twitter before it was bought. It was like a party place. Like they had rec room, game rooms,
Yeah.
places where you could go think. They had special desks like where it's just like really small that you could make phone calls and no one could hear your conversation. Like they built it like it was very modern, and so like, I guess they wanted people to play games with each other. I guess like ping pong in the break room or something like
Right.
that. So I never had the luxury of working in an office that way. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
I kind of have to agree with Craig on this. When I was working, no, I never really had an office job because I was always doing like farm work, so I was always out in the fields with people. But like at the end of the day, we'd be like, "You guys want to go get food after we're done with all this work?" And we'd be out there. And I feel like it was also a little just bit like more beneficial social wise instead of being cooped up at home all day long. Because like I was saying before, you're done at home. Then what? Like, do you go out? Some people might. But a lot of times you're like, I'm so tired, I'm just going to go watch something on TV and not even go out and socialize because you're exhausted. Whereas if you're already out, you can go out more, I guess, is my point.
It all depends on the individual. Some
Yeah,
people
I just go back
people,
to look.
So just hate
right.
people.
Yeah, and look, to each their own, right? But once again, it goes back to I don't know why they're asking these people to come back in, but I will say this. When there are colleagues of yours, 8,000 colleagues who have been fired in the last 60 days, and for you to complain about working, it's extremely tone deaf. Like,
I agree on that. Yeah. Like I said, I probably wouldn't cry, but I wouldn't write an article and be like, I got to go back to crunch thing. I'd be more aggravated. But if I'm hired and this is my job, this is how I provide, you got to do what's asked of you or go somewhere else.
And we've talked about this many times. Like I said, there's people who are very passionate about this in the chat, and I appreciate that, right? And that's the beautiful thing. Like, if we agreed on everything, this would be a really boring show.